Okay, so all that story time is kind of leading up into why we're down here today. And it's really to help you guys tune inward, right? To really self-assess a little bit deeper. Because at the end of the day, we are the starting point. Like, we are kind of the tip of the spear. Nick and I talk about this all the time. We kind of feel like we're on an island a lot, where we have these kind of crazy ideas, philosophies, and perspectives on movement and rehabilitation. But we're all kind of on the same island, right? And we're in a really interesting spot that we are the ones that start to really shift the trajectory of our professions, both strength conditioning and rehabilitation, because they are really one and the same. I don't care if you're a strength coach, PT, chiropractor, ATC, doesn't matter, right? We're all trying to move forward and do the best for our clients and really help with that health and longevity and all that vitality. And we're really the only ones getting in the way, right? Because we're the ones that are all arguing on Instagram over what's the best way to squat, what's the best way to program, all this fucking rehab exercises. I know Nick likes to use a lot of bands, and I kind of give him a hard time about it.
Bosu balls, and,
Nobody else got that joke? Wow.
That's okay.
It's an inside thing, I guess.
We keep going, it'll land.
Yeah. It'll land. So we are really the ones that have a lot of influence, and if we work together as a team, we can really start to shift the trajectory of this thing and really start to have a larger ripple effect and create a larger sphere of influence, because it's kind of like turning the Titanic, right? It's going to take like a 1 degree turn at a time to eventually get us where we're going, right? So that's what we're going to do here today. Tune us inward. We're going to start from the ground up, and we're going to look at the kinetic chain about how our feet connect into our upper body and the shoulder, all right? So naturally, being the foot fetish guy, apparently, I'm going to start with the foot and the ankle, and we're going to move up into the knees, hips, and the pelvis, and kind of talk about how that affects the low back. And then Nick is going to take everything from the taint upward and go into the shoulders, and then we're going to tie it together with some specific movements that are going to have a large impact for yourself and for your athletes. That sound good to everybody? Sound cool? Okay, so we are all kind of standing here spread out. This is nice. You guys did the best job out of any group so far. I want you guys to start with your feet underneath your shoulders and hips. Underneath the hips. That would be really weird to go shoulders and hips. You have to find somewhere in between, okay? Hands are gonna be down at the side, so not crossing. And we're gonna close our eyes. We're gonna get a little weird. Maybe you might feel a little tug on your mustache or something, I don't know. Okay, I want you guys to tune inward. I want you to tune into what you feel in your feet. I know the floor is kind of dusty and dirty concrete, but I want you to feel where you got pressure. Okay, do you feel more heels versus forefoot? Do you feel more inside edge versus outside edge? Do we got more in one foot versus the other, maybe the right versus the left? I want you to take that awareness then and move upward into the knees. Do we feel like they're locked out? Is there a soft bend? Do we feel pressure in one versus the other? And then finally, we're going to move that upwards into the hips and the pelvis. Where do we feel tension? Do we feel locked up anywhere? Any pain, tightness, discomfort? Okay? I want you to log that information into the back of your head, because we are going to take that information now and apply it into our movements. Okay? So everybody can go ahead and open their eyes once they feel satisfied with their self-assessment. Who here felt some weird asymmetries in their feet? Anybody? Who would like to volunteer what they felt? I know you didn't volunteer, I just pointed to you, but go ahead.
I externally rotate quite a bit.
Okay.
My right foot, and I twist that.
Gotcha. Did you feel more pressure over there on that side too?
Yeah, I felt more pressure. I had to put more weight on.
More pressure on the left leg?
I broke that foot. So.
There it is. So injury history is a large determinant, right? Because an ankle sprain is a really great example, all right? When we experience an ankle sprain, it's like a trauma, okay? Our body is naturally designed to create a dysfunctional pattern off of that, so you can off-weight the ankle, let it heal. The problem is that dysfunction is supposed to be temporary. When these temporary dysfunctions continue on for a long period of time, that's what develops into these permanent compensation patterns that sometimes we're not even aware of until we start assessing some of this stuff and bringing our attention to it. So for him, more pressure on that left side. Come on out here a second. More pressure on that left side. Let's turn this way, because you guys can then see from the back here. He's got more pressure on that left side ankle. It's actually going to turn his pelvis back to the left. So now we've got a more posteriorly rotated pelvis back here, which creates a more internally rotated hip. So therefore, our pelvis is more forward-facing here on this side, a more externally rotated hip. The only thing you guys really need to worry about with that is that it creates different length-tension relationships of these muscles. So when he goes to squat, which way do you think he's going to lean or shift? Over to that left side. Okay? Anybody feel a lot of weight? Thank you. Feel a lot of weight in their heels? Okay, we got a lot of those too, all right? This is a really interesting one as well. You have a center of mass. It is located about an inch below your belly button at your 4L5 vertebrae, all right? Ironically enough, it's also the most common site of low back pain. Okay? So it's the aggregate of everything that makes you, you. When we spend a lot of time into our heels and on the outside edge of our feet, it kind of feels like to our brain that we're gonna fall over. So our brain's really smart. It's gonna say, hey, well, let's just pull the pelvis forward and try and counterbalance to keep you upright. So now we're putting ourselves into a position where we've predisposed all this lumbar extension. So that's all our brain knows, right? It is skewing ourselves to that. And we're gonna feel that now with our hip and pelvis assessment. That making sense to you guys? Yeah. Okay, so go ahead and put your hands on your hips. All right, power pose. What I would like you to do is dump your pelvis down into this stripper booty posture. So we're gonna go into this anterior pelvic tilt and then move from that back through center into this posterior pelvic tilt. What I want you to assess is which position feels more comfortable and how smooth does it feel moving from point A to point B. Do we have a lot of movement there, or is there nothing at all? Right? So you can tell when we put a lot of pressure into extension, if you overload yourself in a back squat over and over and over again, your brain is essentially sending out a defensive signal saying, hey, we don't like to be here all that often. Right? We're causing too much stress there. Okay? Now, keeping your hands on your hips, we're going to go right knee pushing forward out over the right foot. Good. And then left knee pushing out over the left foot. And what I want you to do is alternate back and forth here and feel what your hips are doing. Come on out here a second. Okay, let's turn and face everybody this way. Awesome. So go ahead and put your right knee out over your right foot. Awesome. Left knee out over the left foot. What happens when he goes to the left side? Whole body shifts, okay? So if we look at this from the ground up, we're looking at the frontal plane, pelvis like a step-up position, all right? His left foot should be able to pronate, which can create internal rotation, which allows that left hip to drop down on that side. If he can't get that, rotation, his body's gonna compensate by shifting laterally into the frontal plane. See how that works? Okay, thank you. We're gonna tie this all together, I promise, okay? Last piece of the puzzle here is our transverse plane, rotational plane. Hands on the hips, good. We're gonna keep everything from the belly button to the top of the head, including your shoulders, completely still. You got that? Yep. Okay. All I wanna see is you rotate the pelvis back to the left, center, back to the right, center, left, center, right, center. Quality of movement, we got any? Nope. No. But it's gonna happen tomorrow when you go to throw shit with Woodsky.
Shit's gonna throw us.
Shit's gonna throw you, you're gonna put all that stress someplace else, okay? So if we go back down to the feet, whenever we rotate, you should see, if we rotate to the left, that right foot should pronate, should flatten to the ground. The left arch should lift and supinate, and vice versa. That is the driving point. And you can see that what Carl's doing here with this wholesale rotation. That's a great way to assess it as well, to see if your feet are actually moving. If they're not, we know we're now missing a piece of the puzzle. That force is now not going to be distributed or attenuated as efficiently up the rest of the chain. Okay? This is a big component, and it's really, I know we're going into a lot of detail here, but the simple shit, when you go and work with your athletes, you can quickly run through this, and it just gives you an idea of how you can better coach them or cue them. Because if you've got somebody who's putting a lot of pressure over the left side, maybe cue them, put a little more pressure over that pinky toe knuckle. It's going to help balance it out, especially for something like a bilateral squat. Speaking about a bilateral squat, we're going to do a few now. Okay? We're going to assume your best squat position. And I want you guys to give me 3 of your best, smoothest squat.
Back rack.
Thank
I want
you,
your
Nick.
shoulders
Back rack.
locked up like you have a bar on your back. I want it to be as close to your actual back squat as you can make that happen right now.
Fantastic. All right, folks, let's see it. And once again, tune inward, slow it down. Jesus Christ, this is not a CrossFit class.
I hear a lot of profanity over an air squat.
Holy hell. Once again, tune inward to your feet. What's going on down there? Is it, are you feeling the same type of pressure sensation happen? Yeah. See how this stuff works? All right. Okay. Now, we're going to take this pattern of how we generate force through the lower extremity, and Nick's going to tie it up into the shoulders and the back.
Okay, so to kind of integrate to where Matt's at with this and what we're talking about, the reason we had you guys do the back squat is because this is a fully contiguous unit, right? So we are from the top down. Anytime we actually load a bar under our back and have any amount of force, we have to get that weight from our shoulders down to our hips and legs as efficiently and as quickly as possible. The goal is as little movement as we can get through the spine. We want this to be a relatively rigid, stable base from which we're going to move, right? So the goal is I load a bar on my back, I need to get that weight from my shoulder down to my hips and my legs. So what we're looking for on this, as Matt had you guys stand and rotate the hips back and forth, how many of you guys had that big shoulder motion with it as well? Or how many of you had very little movement, right? So the idea here is as we're trying to rotate the hips, all of a sudden the shoulders are moving. There's a really good reason for this. Our hips are a ball and socket joint. Looks like something like this, right? These are really, really good at rotation. They're very efficient to be able to go through those planes of motion. Our spine, which has a lot of joints, a lot of segments, there's a lot going on within it, but simplifying it, it's really good at flexing and extending. So bending forward, bending backward. Now, what it can do is compensate. So if we have a loss of rotation, our spine is able to create rotation. Now, it does that in some degree of flexion and extension. So it's within the same movement patterns, but it's just not very good at it, okay? So what we'll see is if we don't have the ability to rotate through the hips, all of a sudden, our trunk is going to create the rotation for us. We're an evolutionary animal. We're just not a very smart one, right? We will always trade the quality of movement for quantity of movement. And to us, we can't prioritize the difference between I have to get away from this threat that is really dangerous and I have to get underneath of this bar and squat. Our priorities are not necessarily the same to our brain. Now, speaking of our brain, when it comes to movement and musculature, our brain is very simplistic. It can move shit, it can keep shit from moving. That's about it. So our job is to try to find ways to integrate for these patterns to clean up those movement asymmetries and those deficits that we see, okay? So if we were lacking that rotation, we're going to see that rotation start to occur within the spine. Now, why did I have you guys back rack? Shoulders into this position, right? And we heard a lot of groaning, a lot of tightness, and if you're somebody who grips the bar relatively narrowly, we might even see a little bit of extra rotation through the spine. What I like to call squatting in italics, right? I load the bar on my back, I'm here, I'm gonna come down and do something like this and then drive up through, right? This is that squatting in italics. Let that one sink in. I really like that analogy.
Don't worry, guys. It took me a while to figure it out.
So why does that matter? What's significant about that? Matt, I'm going to borrow you again. So as we've gone through the pelvic assessment and the motions through the pelvis, as I've talked about, we're going to load a bar onto our back, and the goal is to get that weight from our shoulders down to our hips as efficiently and as quickly as possible. What we're going to do is stabilize our spine, and the major muscle groups that we're going to use to do that is going to come into your lat, right? So lat is a big, beefy muscle that comes all the way down the back. It ties into this big, thick chunk of material in the low back called the lumbodorsal fascia. That fascia is significant because it ties the lat into your glutes at the top, okay? So what we see is left side shoulder, right side glute. Those are an intimate, interconnected pair, okay? So if I have a right side low back issue, what shoulder might we be looking at and think we have an issue with? We might see something on the left shoulder, right? It just so happens, Matt and I were talking about this last night, he's had an acute, meaning a relatively new issue happening at his right side low back, okay? I'm gonna come have Matt go through this movement. So we're gonna go here, okay? So Matt can touch his hands, okay? Go ahead and switch the other way for me, Matt. And Matt can almost touch his hands. It's really, really, really close. Now, what is interesting about that movement pattern? Am I interested most in that terminal position? Does it matter to me that he can touch his hands? No. What's significant about that? Meaning what?
It's better on one side than the other. So
Okay.
that's different mobility in the shoulder.
This is true. What else is significant as we go through this movement? I could stand and look at him in the front and get the same information that I'm looking for. Rotation. How do we get to that position? That's more significant than the position itself, okay? What we watch in Matt is he drives his chest forward to create motion, and then he can extend back. So all of a sudden, this is not nearly as valuable as this, right? So what I'm seeing is we have some form of limitation that's occurring within this upper extremity that can also show itself down into the lower, okay? So Matt, what I'm gonna have you do, elbows come up, we're almost in kind of a pseudo front rack position. I'm looking at his elbows in this front landscape. You guys can see it really clearly from here. We see what's happening at the left arm, right? We have this turned in just a little bit. This one's relatively neutral. What's the muscle action of the lat, guys? Anybody know this specifically? Internal rotation. Awesome. Guy behind the camera, come on, man. You're supposed to be a ghost, dude. So internal rotation is a major player. What's the other primary muscle action of the lat? In an open kinetic chain system, it is extension from flexion, okay? From a flexed position, it's to be a powerful extensor, okay? So go ahead, back up into our front rack position, Matt. What we can talk about, Matt's having a right-sided low back issue at the moment. We can start looking at this front racked position where he wants to swing his elbows out. So as we have that amount of tightness that's occurring into the upper body, into the upper back, we can also look at that lat integration down into the low back, right? So if we're having this left-sided issue, a limitation of external rotation, because the lat is a powerful medial rotator. It wants to pull my shoulder this way. So if I have a limitation at going into external, that says to me that there's maybe an issue happening around that soft tissue that is expressing itself in this way. So as I have him up here, we can look up, that elbow wants to kick out, the hand wants to drive in, okay? We can look at it and say, this is about where Matt is binding up right now. And if I look at his right side, I can drive him, I'm forcing it, but I can drive him, there you go, free pop.
Thank you.
I can drive him to a lot more external rotation on that right side. So I know that the right side low back issue can create an expression into the left shoulder because of that interconnected nature of the lat transferring weight down into the hips, okay? So what we'll see is when you guys start shifting your hips back and forth and we get this big chest movement, okay, where is my limitation within my shoulders? So we go through the whole process, we work the feet, we work the hips, we assess these things and we don't notice anything dramatic within the feet or the hips. Where else might we start to see these issues pop up whenever we have somebody back squatting? Into the shoulders. So if I have this limitation where I can't get underneath the bar because my shoulder hurts, or I'm squatting in italics like I like to say, I'm rotating through because my lat is not allowing me to translate through that full appreciable range of motion without the deviation. We have to start considering how do we integrate to those shoulders. So I have a kid, he comes into the gym, we have to back squat today. We have this limitation, we see him either shifting like this or he's rotating the bar. What are some options that we have to address this rapidly so we can get through this training session?
Do a range of motion?
How so?
Well, if we see the deviation occur at a certain range of motion.
Excellent.
We're only going this far. Yeah.
Okay, so we want to squat as low as he can possibly get on a normal day. What's another choice?
Does he have to back squat?
We have to back squat.
Adjust his safety squat grip?
Adjust the grip. Safety squat bar is a great option. That's a cheater move, but I like it. I love it. So yeah, so
Lots of
if we're
constraints
in here, right, and I'm seeing this deviation because the lat is now taking over creating rotation, if I start to take range out, I've now created some amount of external that now allows for more internal rotation to occur. This is a fast, quick option so that we can finish through our movement set. But now, what are we going to do? The next time this kid comes into the gym, are we just going to throw him right back into this wide grip? No, we have to actually address the underlying problem, okay?
Nick, real quick. If the thumb is limiting, would you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, same sort of thing?
Absolutely.
Same chain?
So I personally, bilateral labral tear, AC separation on my right side. I cannot grip appreciably on the bar. So I have my bar like this, and I just create a wedge. It's not ideal. It's my workaround because I'm fucking old. So the reason why we're talking about all this stuff and the integration from the feet all the way up through, we have to talk about how do we correct this. So what we're going to do, Matt and I are going to give you guys options that should take no more than 2 to 3 minutes in a warm-up cycle to address any of these limiting factors rapidly for the individual.
Of course, we're going to start with the foot and the ankle, and we're going to utilize our gait pattern here. So walking, how many people think they can walk well? Does anybody walk well? Huh? No, everybody's going to do it. Nothing to really look at here. But think about this for a second. You could have the most intelligently designed program out there, usually around, let's say, give it 50 to 80 reps for any given training session. How many steps do you take in a day?
1,000.
Wow, that's impressive. That's actually really good. Look at you doubling the average.
7 to 10.
Sure, 7 to 10, awesome. So a lot more opportunities, a lot more cycles to fuck yourself up, right? So this is what my point is, we can do the best intention behind our training program, but if we go and we move this differently while we're walking, it's gonna have a negative effect on it, all right? So I like to start with an exaggerated form of a gait pattern, okay? So what we're gonna do here is have everybody start with their feet underneath their hips. Awesome. And you can go ahead and practice putting pressure where you didn't last time, where you didn't have it, okay, to help even you out. And we're gonna all take our left leg. If everybody knows what the left side is, put the L up, okay, left side. My girlfriend still needs to do that at 33 years old.
That's a mean trick to the
Oh, this
dyslexic
is on
kid.
video. Kendall's gonna see that one now. That's all right, cut that one out. So we're gonna take a step forward with our left foot. Awesome. What I want you guys to do is have a soft bend in that knee. That's gonna allow us to put pressure over our midfoot. I want you to find pressure over your big toe knuckle, your fifth toe knuckle, and the inside portion of your heel. That's gonna create your tripod foot. That structure creates a triangle, okay? It is like the truss of a roof of a house. Very stable structure, holds up the entire roof. That same structure holds up your body weight. What happens if we're missing a point there?
It collapses.
Right, your structure's not gonna be as stable, okay? We're gonna have enough weight, so thinking like 90% of the weight on that front foot by shifting our pelvis forward. That doesn't mean we hinge forward, and doesn't mean we drive the hips forward. You see that? We're just shifting with a proud, tall structure out over that foot. It should be so much so that I could take my back toe off, and I'm stable. I kickstand. See that? Awesome. Now we're gonna take our right hand, since we have our left leg forward, right hand's gonna go palm up. We're gonna reach. You would be that guy.
Yeah.
And we're gonna reach that palm forward as far as we can. So once again, we're working on rotation through the glenohumeral joint and also trying to get thoracic rotation. Opposite hand, thumb down. Here's our internal rotation extension, reaching it back behind you. So where I lack in rotation, I make up for here. You guys see that? Okay. Now I can extend, posteriorly rotate to that side of the rib cage. And then the last piece of the puzzle is you're gonna take your left hip and kick it to the wall to the left. Shift it to the left, good. All while maintaining your eyes on the horizon. Staring to my soul, right here. There you go. Awesome. I want you guys to take a big deep breath in, try to fill air down to the pelvic bowl. And as you exhale, we're gonna find the big toe knuckle, dig it in, and pull ourselves forward into the next step. And switch. How smooth was that for everybody? Not.
This is the least amount of closeness we've had all day.
I know, we're gonna keep this one going though.
I'm kind of disappointed. Yeah, we got several more
Yeah.
steps.
Now, same thing, opposite hands, tune inward, don't just rush through this. What does it feel differently from the other side? Do you feel stronger on one side versus the other? Stuff to consider, okay? Go ahead and reach, find the big toe knuckle, big breath in, and pull yourself forward. Good. Oh, we could do one more. Yes, awesome. Here we go. Bring it in, folks. Big breath in, dig big toe, pull forward. Oh, look at this. Not inappropriate at all. This just made my weekend, Nick. Right here.
He's been planning this all day.
All day long.
He has been trying to get to that moment.
So this was our foot and our ankle is a great way, obviously, to train the closed kinetic chain. Okay, we're standing on them all day long. But one limitation that we typically see is that we don't train our upper body in the closed kinetic chain very well, and Nick's gonna show you how.
Okay, so closed kinetic versus open kinetic chain, just to kind of clarify the terminology real fast. Closed kinetic chain, meaning my foot is in contact with the floor. I am moving my body over top of my leg, right? Upper body, like Matt said, we don't often do this. A lot of the time, whenever it comes to the upper body, we are moving our shoulder on our body, okay? There's a pattern ingrained within your brain. This is a known task. So squatting is a great example of known task. We know how to do it. Everybody has a game plan for it. We don't have to break it down necessarily in our brain into its elemental units because we're going to load a bar, we're going to step out, and we're going to drop into that squat, right? That's a known task. We have a motor plan for it. We have a game plan for what's going to happen. But if we have pain or dysfunction into those movements, we now have to create novelty to that known task. We have to break it down into its fundamental pieces so that our brain can now process the novelty, the new thing that we don't have a motor plan for. We create opportunity. We create lateral capacity, so you now have more movement options. And as we do so, we start to reconstitute that back to our known task. And all of a sudden, we have a known task that has more potential to be completed, okay? Now, the reason I talk about that is because the upper body works in an open kinetic chain a lot of the time. Novelty to the system can simply be applying closed kinetic chain movement, okay? So when we go into this assessment, we're looking at external rotation, internal rotation of the shoulder. A great way to do this in a closed kinetic chain position, can I get somebody, can I have a body? Yeah, yeah, go.
Three bodies.
High plank position, wide feet, yeah, nice wide base. Okay, we're gonna keep the hips down, so I want you nice and low. And we're going to do it off of his left side here as a demo point. I want you to keep the hand right where it's at, screw that elbow pit forward. Feel the lat engagement, you guys see that? Yeah. Okay, what I want you to do is shift your weight to the left side, lift the right hand off the floor. Shift, hold. Good. So now we have this integration, closed kinetic chain position. We're getting compressive force down through the shoulder. The brain is going to start getting to map out a new way of accomplishing this task. The posterior aspect of the shoulder is now going to be able to fire much more efficiently. You can feel that, right? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead and put the other hand back down. Breathe for a second. Okay, so there's our step one. We can now start to integrate that. We can build a new motor program in the brain for how we're going to complete that task to fire the lat, to fire into the posterior aspect of the shoulder. But if we have a major asymmetry, a major limitation in my capacity for external versus internal rotation, I can now apply that here. So we're going to screw that elbow pit forward, we're going to fire the lat, we're going to squeeze, shift your weight over to the left side, right hand comes to the left shoulder. Okay, take this elbow, I want you to drive it down into the finger there, okay? Nice, tight, and then open up as far as you can go. Open up, open, 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 open. We now just completed internal versus external rotation of the shoulder in a closed kinetic chain position. Go ahead and relax. Great way to follow that, or great way to follow up a limitation of the shoulder before we get into our actual training programs, okay?
Good, 30 seconds to wrap it up. So you guys can see the connection there. We loaded up the shoulder blade to scapula the same way we just loaded up the hip for the lower body. And these are two great movements, like Nick said, to pull into a great warm-up session. And we're gonna be going through some more movement snacks actually throughout this weekend here, so stay tuned for the breaks. It's gonna be some fun stuff. Nick, coming out here, I'm gonna give it a bow. Thank you, guys.